got that email late.
Well, he's in Texas, so he'll make another round, I'm sure.
You live in Texas?
Mm-hmm. Huh? Yehuda is? When is that going to take place, do you know? Would you join me in prayer? Father, I come before your throne today, thanking you for another glorious day, and thank you for the good health that we all enjoy. Thank you for your love and grace and mercy, your generous provisions of everything that we could possibly need or want. And Father, I ask that you would speak to me and speak through me, and reveal to us what you would have us know, be glorified. These things I pray in the name and merit of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Georgianne, what's the Torah portion? Vayachi. He lived. This is a prophecy of a famine in the land of Jehovah's word, if that makes sense to you. And we're in Bereshit, we're in Genesis chapter 47, beginning in verse 28. In Genesis chapter 47, verse 28. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. And the time of Israel to die, see how he changes from Jacob to Israel? And the time for Israel to die drew near, and he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please put your hand under my thigh and show loving commitment and truth to me. Please do not bury me in Egypt." You see that, place your hand under my thigh? When was the first time we saw that? When Abraham commanded Eliezer to slip his hand under his thigh to swear an oath. Now, the Talmud says that Joseph looked at his daddy and says, "Hey, my word's good. I'm the king of Egypt. May not be Pharaoh, but I'm the king of Egypt. My word is good. Whatever I say I'll do, I'll do." You would expect to accept that, wouldn't you? But Jacob, seeing into the future, said, "Yeah, I know it is, but I want an oath. An oath is binding. Your word ain't binding. Your forgetfulness, but your oath. When you bring Abba into the picture and you make him a part of the contract, this is something severe." So, in verse 30, "And I shall lie with my fathers, and you shall take me up out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." Now, where is their burial place? Machpelah in Hebron. Machpelah. Now, we're going to get into it a little bit more, but this place is really divided, almost as much as Bethlehem. The Arabs on one side, the Israelis on the other side. You know, the Jews, they both claim Machpelah. And it hasn't changed not one whit since this burial took place. We'll get into that at the end of this chapter, or at the end of this Torah portion. Incidentally, this is the last Torah portion of the reading of Genesis, or Bereshit. And it's a good one. It's one of my favorites. Anyhow, I have a new favorite every week. That's right, Georgianne. And he said, "Swear to me," and he swore to him, and Yisrael bowed himself on the head of the bed. it's written that Jacob was in poor health. And he asked Abba, before he fell into his poor health, he asked him, he says, all of my predecessors, all my forefathers, when it come to die, time to die, they were just walk along and they just died. No forewarning. Father, you never gave us any warning. We didn't have time to get our affairs in order. And thanks to Jacob, this prayer, according to the Talmud, is why nowadays you get to feeling bad and you get feeling sick and your body wears out and gets weak and then after an illness you perish from this life. Well, you can thank Father Jacob. And this is what caused his death. Was he was getting sick, he was getting frail, he was losing his sight, so to speak, and losing his he was wore out. So he kneels at the head of his bed. He bows at the head of his bed. After these events, it came to be that it was said to Joseph, "See, your father is sick," and he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, where do you think that Joseph lived? Wouldn't you think that he lived in the capital of Egypt? Where is the capital of Egypt today? Cairo? His daddy lived in Goshen. That's up there on the coast in the delta. So there was a lot of traveling going back and forth, and he had emissaries that would, relay messages. It wasn't him that stayed with Jacob all this time. But Jacob had 17 extra years with Joseph to account for those 17 years that he lost. So when Joseph brought Manasseh and Ephraim, and verse 2, and Jacob was told, "See, your son Joseph is coming to you." And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. He didn't want to appear weak, not just to Joseph or his two sons, but to the world. He didn't want anyone to think that he was a little addled, that he was not thinking straight. So he gathered himself up, strengthened himself. He shook himself, if you will, and he received him. And Jacob said to Joseph, "El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, and said to me, See, I'm making you fruitful and shall increase you and make of you an assembly of peoples, and give this land to your seed after you as an everlasting possession." And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to Egypt, are mine. Whoa. No, Dad, they're mine. Your mind's slipping. They're really my kids. And no, I didn't make a mistake. Y'all about to burn me up. I didn't make a mistake. These are mine. Because prophecy is about to be fulfilled. And if you look in Revelation, there is one tribe that's not mentioned. One tribe. And these two form one tribe. Although they're separate, they still form one tribe, and there's the sons of Joseph, adopted. They're native sons. And if you won't follow me along in Romans 11, but out of Egypt I will call my people. This is where Paul gets this. It's not all of the Israelites. It's Manasseh and Joseph that are brought into the tribes. And we're going to get into the tribes in just a little bit. Your offspring whom you shall bring forth after them are yours. They're yours, Joseph. And let them be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. And I, when I came from Paddan, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, or to Hebron. And I buried her there on the way to Hebron, or that is Bethlehem, not Hebron, Bethlehem. Now, why did he have to explain to Joseph why he buried his mama on the side of the road? You have any idea? Joseph was already, according to the Talmud, he was all ready to go, and when he buried Jacob, his daddy, in Machpelah, he was ready to go to his mama's grave and exhume her body and carry her and place her with Joseph and Leah. No, don't do that. This is ordained by God that I should do this. She is where she's supposed to be according to Abba. And Yisrael saw Joseph's sons and said, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons whom Elohim has given me in this place." Now he's already told him that his sons were his. Well, who are they? He knows who they are. This is not a formal introduction. This is recognition. Okay, you brought your boys. Did I lose it? Yeah. Hard to keep that thing on. Has been taking care of Jacob. He's been running back and forth. So is Manasseh. So they're not unfamiliar boys. And how old do you think they are at this time? 20s, 30. You know, they're not any older than 30, because he didn't start having these kids until after he was viceroy and his second cousin was given to him. Incidentally, I don't remember if I told you last week or not. Dina, if y'all remember, when she was out carousing around with the girlfriends, was taken hostage, was raped, impregnated by the prince of Shechem. Her daughter is now Joseph's wife. Okay? She's a true Canaanite. She's also a true what? Israelite. I mean, the 12 tribes. She's a Canaanite, but she's also an Israelite. So there's no Egyptian blood running around in Manasseh or Ephraim. Getting back to the story. Who are these in verse 8? And Joseph said to his father, "They're my sons, whom Elohim has given me in this place." And he said, "Please bring them to me and let me bless them." And the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he was unable to see. And he drew them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face. But see, Elohim has also shown me your seed. I never thought I'd see you again. And now, not only do I get to see you, I get to see your sons. And like I mentioned last week, Joseph should have had 12 sons of his own. But divine providence stopped him at 2, because God's will is going to be manifested. There's only 12 tribes. And we're about to get into this in chapter 49 about the tribes. So Joseph, seeing that he wants to bless them, he places Manasseh on Jacob's right side, so he doesn't have to reach for his blessing. He just places his hand on him. And he has Ephraim sitting on his left. Ephraim is the younger. But at this point, Jacob crosses his hands. Joseph says, "No, Dad, I worked this out where you didn't have to exert yourself. You don't have to cross your hands. Your hand, put your hand back over here on the right because that's the oldest. That's Manasseh." He says, "I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Don't correct me." So he places his right hand on Ephraim, and his left hand he places on Manasseh, and he proceeds to bless them. What is his blessing? Go to 14. No, it's not. 15. "And he blessed Joseph and said, The Elohim before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who has fed me all of my life long to this day, the messenger who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the youths, and let my name be called upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them increase to a multitude in the midst of the earth." Multitude. Bless them. May you be prosperous of your loins. Populate the earth. Was that not the blessing that God pronounced upon Adam and Eve? Go forth and populate the earth. But here, it's not just populate the earth with just humans. Here is go and populate the earth with the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and your daddy Jacob. The 12 tribes. And he blessed them in verse 20. "And he blessed them on that day, saying, In you Yisrael shall bless, saying, Elohim, make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. And Yisrael said to Joseph, See, I am dying, but Elohim shall be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. And I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow." What did he give them? What land did he take from the Amorites? Shechem. Why did he give the land of Shechem to Joseph? Incidentally, this is where Joseph is buried to this day. Because this is where his wife come from. He was also blessing his wife with the inheritance of the land, what is present-day Samaria. God's a God of order. Nothing takes him by surprise. You think the order of your life surprises you? I wasn't anticipating that. It didn't take God that. I mean, he didn't go, "I'm sorry about that, bud. I didn't know that was happening." He never says, "Oops." He never says, "Oh, I should have thought this one out." Because he has thought it out from the beginning of time till the end of time as we know it. He has everything designed to fall into place. Chapter 49. Now let me go back to the sword and the bow. Normally, when you attack with this type of weaponry, you attack with what first? Don't you attack with the bow and arrows? I mean, shoot your enemy from a distance. Annihilate them as best you can from a distance with your bow and the arrow. Only then, when they still advance, do you pull your sword, because the bow and the arrow is useless at that point when they get up close and you can smell their stinking breath. Do you use your sword? But here he reverses it. He says, with my sword and with my bow. And as the sages interpret this is like prayer. You know, we had a discussion during Sukkot about the reading of the Amidah or the Amidah. 3 times a day. And reading the prayers from the prayer book. And there was some discussion that, Yeshua says, don't repeat the prayers over and over and over and over and over and over and over. He's not talking this type prayer. This type prayer gets you in the frame of mind to pray. This type prayer, you know what is coming up. So if you're praying, and this is with the bows and the arrows, okay? So if you're praying an individual prayer, and there's a section in the Amida that gives room for your personal prayer. How long is your personal prayer? Do y'all pray for an hour? Personal prayer? Do you pray an hour? Short? So what you're saying is that, let me back up. 15 minutes? Is that short? 5 minutes? Is that short? 1 minute? Is that short? I bet you not a one of us in here prays a minute. Somebody have a stopwatch. Count a minute right now. Tell me when. Mark.
Go.
Okay, we're going to wait a minute. That's 30 seconds. I would venture to say that most of our prayers are 30 seconds or less. The Amida, or the Amida, however way you want to pronounce it, like I say, is our bow and arrows. This is in preparation. We take care of the stuff that we need to be praying. It gets us in the form, in the habit. And then when it gets down to the small ranks, to the short, to the fight, where it affects you directly or affects someone that you love directly, that's when you take your sword out. You know, that double-edged sword that we read of in the New Testament. And we pray with all earnest for 30 seconds. You can't even make it in a minute. The Amida, how long does it take you to pray? Less than 10 minutes. You pray that 3 times a day, but you interweave your personal supplications to Abba in that prayer. This is what he's talking about in, the long way around according to our sages. We get into chapter 49. And Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather together so that I declare to you what is to befall you in the days." I've heard preachers say this is the time when Jacob blesses his sons. There is no blessing here. None. This is a declaration. This is a prophecy of what is going to take place with his sons. And if you'll notice, Dinah is not around. These are his sons. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my power, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of exaltation and the excellency of power. Boiling like water, you do not excel because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. he went up to my couch. Although this was forgiven, he did not get the blessing that Joseph did. And if you'll go back into 48, you'll see that he gave Joseph the double blessing. Why do you think he gave him the double blessing? Because he was the firstborn of his true love, Raquel. He loved Leah, but she was not his first choice. You remember he was kind of deceived into wedlock with her. And they were twins. He just didn't care for Leah as much as he loved Rachel. Shimon and Levi are brothers. They're weapons and implements of violence. These two get the same verbiage. Let my being not enter their council. Let my esteem not be united to their assembly, because they killed a man in their displeasure and they lamed an ox in pleasure. They're mean. They're mean individuals. Cruel to a fault. And yet, who is made priest? Levi. This is where the Levitical line comes from. They're the ones that do the slaughtering. With one stroke, they can almost sever the head of a ox, a bull. They're priests not bothered by blood. They're bloody people. Okay? Next time you look at somebody who claims to be a Levitical priest, oh, you're one of them. That was meant to be a joke, but it's not really a joke. Now here comes the foretelling of Yehuda's tribe. You, Yehuda, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children bow down before you. Yehuda is a lion's cub. From the prey you have gone up, my son. He bowed down, he crouched like a lion, and like a lion, who does rouse him? The scepter shall not turn aside from Yehuda, nor an inscriber from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of peoples. Binding his donkey to the vine. Oh, wait a minute. Do you remember reading something where Yeshua called them to go and get a donkey and her colt and time? He washed his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. Does this not sound like Revelation? His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. This is where the leadership of the tribes comes from, Yehuda. This is why people refer to all tribes, all 12 tribes, as Jews, because Yehuda is the leadership. Yehuda is one that maintains the Torah, the written and the oral. Yehuda is the one that maintains the scribes. And the scribes have such a perfect work that not one jot, one tittle is out of place. When they transcribe Torah, it goes from here to here without mistake. Think about that. Can you do that? When I'm ready to write a letter and I write it out in short, or in my shorthand, I put it out on paper, and then I go to type it. Do you know that I do not write that same letter? When I'm writing a page of a book that I'm writing, and I write it down longhand, and I go to type it up on the computer, you know that what I wrote in longhand never gets to the screen. But these scribes, that's their job, is to copy exactly what they're reading to empty parchment. Then we get to Zebulun. He dwells at the seashore. He is for a haven for ships, and his border is unto Sidon. That's all there is for him. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. And he saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. And he inclined his shoulder to bear burden, and became a subject to slave labor. Dan rightly rules his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan is a serpent by the way, an adder by the path that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider falls backward. I have waited for your deliverance, O Jehovah. Gad, a raiding band raids him, but he raids its heel. Now he's speaking prophecy into his sons. This is what's going to take place with your tribes. Bread for Asher is rich, and he gives delicacies of the sovereign. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He gives words of elegance. And then he speaks to Joseph. Joseph is an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree, an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree by a fountain. His branches run over a wall, and the archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there in the shepherd, the stone of Israel. From the El of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the heavens from above, blessings of the deep that lie beneath, blessings of the breast of the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors up to the limit of the everlasting hills. They are on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brothers. Why do you think that Abba made Yehuda the declaration and Joseph this declaration? Why didn't he make Yehuda the leader? Any idea? I mean, Joseph the leader. Why didn't he make Joseph the leader instead of Yehuda? Joseph is perfect. Yehuda's not. We've all seen these 3 and 4 year olds and these young kids that can listen to a song, for instance, and they play that song with perfection on any instrument they sit at, and they've never had a lesson. What kind of person do you call those? I forget the name. Prodigy. Or the young adult that goes from elementary school straight to Harvard or Yale, or to Princeton, or to Oxford. They skip. They're so brilliant. We admire them, do we not? But we can't relate to them. Why? Because every day we live is a struggle. Every day we live is a struggle to comprehend what is going on in our life, whether it's good or bad. We have a tremendous amount of struggle. Yehuda has a tremendous amount of struggle. He can relate to the people, and the people can relate to him. Joseph, not so much. Joseph is that potentate, that viceroy that sits above everybody else and issues orders. And everybody looks up to him, admires him. They can't relate to him. They certainly can't approach him. This is why our Messiah doesn't come from the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. It doesn't come from Joseph. It comes from Yehuda. Because Yeshua can relate. Although he is perfect, he went through the trials and tribulations. Did he not? Of things that we can only imagine with our mouth open. We go through all these blessings. We go to Benjamin. He's a wolf that tears in the morning. He eats prey, and at night he divides the spoil. What happened to Benjamin? Do y'all remember in 2 Samuel what happened to him? That tribe? It's a rather sad and gory story, but there's this man that traveled into the land of Benjamin. He stopped at a town, stayed at a hotel, inn, left his concubine outside. She was gang raped, brutally assaulted. He got up the next morning, come out, and saw what was going on. Cut her into 12 pieces and sent her to the 12 tribes and said, I want justice. I demand justice. Benjamin says, we are not going to look for these men that did this. We are a sovereign nation, and you're not going to tell us what to do. Sound familiar? Our United States of America, do you know what a state is? What do you call it? The state of Israel, the state of Mexico, the state of Venezuela, the state of France. They're individual, autonomous, governing bodies of people, are they not? The United States of America is that, but we're supposed to be united. We're all autonomous. Every state. We have our own rules, our own regulations. And some of them are superseded. What? Federal rules and guidelines. The Israelites, these 12 tribes, or 11 of them, waged war against the Benjamites. The civil war. And almost annihilated the men. Almost annihilated the women. In fact, it got so bad that the Benjamites left Israel, the land of Canaan, and went into Europe. And it said that they went to the United Kingdom, and this is where the monarchy comes from, is from the Benjamites, that tribe. Whether it is or not, I don't know. Just relating what I've heard, what I've read. But to get back to this, it got to the point where this tribe was almost extinct. And then they had this little agreement, okay, between the tribes, the 11 existing tribes there. We're going to let them come down, the men from Benjamin, and take our daughters. So they have this little soiree, if you will, right outside of Shiloh. It's called the Valley of the Daughters. I prune grapes there. It's a beautiful valley. And all the daughters from all the 11 tribes, they were dancing and having a party, and then they were raided, and the male folks, they turned their back on their daughters because this was pre-planned, and the Benjamites took their daughters and built up the Benjamite tribe once again. And after that, then they forgot, whatever the case may be, and they began to intermarry between the tribes once again. It's a sad and bloody part of history, but it's the truth. It's written down in Torah. I said all this to get to this point. Without the 12 tribes being whole, God's plan couldn't continue. Now, the United States of America is, what is the common term? What is that? Not breadbasket, it's a pot. Melting pot of the nations. What happens with the melting pot of the nations? Well, you lose your identity. Do you not? I mean, the Comanche over here at Fort Stockton, they may not have a clue. I mean, they may know they're Comanche, but they don't have a clue of their heritage. Their language is lost. What have they done? They've blended in with the Spanish. They look Spanish. Well, if I look and you think I am, I might as well start speaking Spanish. Throughout the nation, we've got this boiling pot, this mishmash of ideals and ideas and cultures, and we've lost our identity. The Israelites are a salad. Papa makes a great salad. I mean, he puts in everything that he likes. It's a great, that's what God did with these 12. There's 12 ingredients in this salad bowl, and each one of them tastes different. Each one of them has their own characteristics. Each one of them has their own color leaf, if you will. One of them's a carrot. One's a lettuce. One's a, I don't know what they are. One's a cucumber. And the Israelis love cucumbers, pickles. One's a tomato. But you see, there's a different taste with every fork stab. This is what the United States used to be. A mini Israel. Until we don't want to offend anybody. You know, we want to include everybody. We want to make it easy for everybody to come into the family, and well, that's why we have the trouble that we have. But the Israelites, being autonomous the way they are finally being recognized throughout the world, not only as Israelite, not only as Jew, but individually. And there's not a one of them out there that can tell you whether they're from the tribe of Benjamin or whether they're from the tribe of Issachar. Whether they're from Naphtali or whether they're from Gad. They can't tell you. Their DNA won't allow that to take place. Why? Because they're a tribe. They're 12 tribes. Because God has them as the salad bowl. Now, I'm going to get into chapter 50. It's the last chapter on this before I close. Jacob dies. He carries him with a great pomp, and well, there's a grand parade. To where? Machpelah. But if you'll study the scripture here, it doesn't tell you how they got there until you get to verse 10. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan. And they lamented there with a great and very heavy lamentation. And he performed 7 days of mourning for his father. Where is this? Any idea? 200 years later, Moshe comes on the scene. After 40 years in the wilderness, Moshe dies and Joshua goes across the Jordan at this point. This is a precursor. This is a practice run. You're going to leave from Goshen and you're going to go up and around and you're going to come in from the east. You're going to cross the Jordan. You're going to go back through Jerusalem down to Hebron, Machpelah. Why would he do that? Why does he make you do the things that you do? When it would be so much easier if you just went from point A to point B. He has you going from A to C to F to D to... You see what I'm getting at? It's his plan. It's his divine plan. His orchestrated plan for you to meet these people, to work things out, to grow daily. But when he gets to the threshing floor of Atad, and he grieves there for 7 days of mourning, there's some semblance of what? How long were the Israelites there before they crossed over the Jordan? So he goes down here to Machpelah. And I love this story, and I wished it was in this scripture, but it's not. This is short form. It's an outline. They get to Machpelah. They have Jacob. There's the royal caravan. I mean, we're not talking a couple of, 12 or 16 camels with 12 tribes represented with their families, all this. There's an entourage coming out of Egypt into Machpelah. Egypt has showed up. Most of Egypt is in Canaan. Egypt is empty. It's like when Lorraine and Westbrook was playing football. Everybody in Mitchell County left. Well, you could have run off with Mitchell County if you wanted it. Nobody would have missed it until they come back and found out that it was... Well, this is the same way. Everybody went to Machpelah. And then, lo and behold, Asa shows up. Y'all remember Asa? Y'all remember the story of forgiveness? But there wasn't any forgetfulness? There really wasn't any forgiveness. You remember the story of how Joseph was... It was... what do you call it? Through the wording, you just knew that he forgave his brothers. Okay? There wasn't any forgiveness. There certainly wasn't any forgetfulness. He just put it aside. Well, this is what happened with Jacob and Asa. They just put aside their differences for a while. Asa shows up and says, "And no way you're burying Jacob in that tomb with my daddy. That's reserved for me." Jacob's grandson, I can't remember his name, it starts with an M, come up behind him with a sword and cut his head off. That head rolled on into the tomb, rolled on into the grave at Isaac's feet. Not retrieved. His skull is with Isaac today. End of discussion. End of a fight. Asa was no longer there belly aching about Jacob any longer. So they buried Jacob, seal up the tomb. He's the last one buried there. It's a remarkable spot. If you ever get to Hebron, you need to visit Machpelah. It's a synagogue and a mosque combined. Verse 17. Let's back up to 15. Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, and they said, "What if Joseph hates us and pays us back all the evil which we did to him?" You see how there's no forgiveness? How there's just I'm just going to set it aside. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. You're not going to live in my mind rent free anymore. The brothers, the 10 brothers are sitting over there thinking, we ain't forgot it. I'm sure he hadn't forgotten. So they make up this lie. And they say, before your father died, he commanded, saying, "This is what you are to say to Joseph. I beg you, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the Elohim of your father." Joseph realized that true repentance had finally taken place. They were afraid. They were so afraid of what Joseph was going to do to them that they decided to bend the knee. And look here in 18. Y'all remember that dream that he had about the sheaves? You remember about the stars? And it says, and his brothers also went down and fell down before his face, and they said, "See, we are your servants." Dream fulfilled. Joseph said to them, "Don't fear, for I am in the place of Elohim." I don't have any animosity towards you. If you hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have done that. If you hadn't have done that, if they hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have been able to do this. And if he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have been sitting here and able to save the world. I don't have anything against you. I haven't forgot it. I know who you are, Shimon. And I know how you ran, Naphtali. And I know how you pleaded for me, Reuben, but I also know how you, Yehuda, you and Shimon, I remember what you did to Shechem. Anytime a preacher says you need to forgive and forget, I'm going to venture to say this: he's an idiot. He's never had anything to come against him to where he has to forget, because you cannot forget. If you forget, what happens? It happens again. And any wise man is not going to put himself in a position for that same thing that did him so much harm to do it again. So as we wrap up this Torah portion, let's read the last two sentences, the last two verses of chapter 50. Joseph made the children of Israel swear, saying, "Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here." And Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. Where was he buried? In Egypt. Do you have any idea? According to the sages, according to the Talmud, he was buried in the Nile River. The same place, the same river that Moshe was supposed to have been thrown in to kill him when he was an infant. But his mother put him in a basket. And when it come time for the Exodus, Moshe said, "Resurrect his coffin. Let's head out." That was the first thing that was hauled out, was Joseph's bones. Father, I come before your throne this morning, and I thank you for the history lesson. I also thank you for reminding us that your ways are your ways, and we need to line up with it. Whatever befalls us, whether it's good or bad, is for your glory and our good. Help us to line up with that. Help us to bend the knee. Help us to confess with the tongue. that you are King. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen. Before I close, I want to tell a story I told to a couple this last week. I don't know whether it did any good to them or not, but you might be able to pass it on. Anybody ever see a fiddle being played? We went over there to Jody Nix the other night. That was a pretty good dance, wasn't it? It was like a family reunion. I think half of Scurry County was over there. But there were two fiddle players being played, two fiddles being played, two different fiddle players. I like to mess around with the fiddle. But I asked this couple, I says, why don't you accept God as your creator and Yeshua as your savior? And what's the hold up here? Look at me. I don't want to be bound up. Don't want to be bound up by doctrine or the rituals of religion. I just don't want to be bound up. I like to be free to do what I want to do. Well, you take a fiddle string, and if you lay that fiddle string on a table, out of the package, Hunter being a guitar player here, that's unbound, is it not? All it can do is collect dust and get in the way. But if you take that same fiddle string and you pick it up and you put the nut in that bracket on the base, and then you run it through the tightening nut on the neck, and you twist it up, you can hear that string as you're tightening it up sing. All by itself. Just without you touching it, other than twisting it. And you're ding, 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 until you get it to the right pitch. If that string could talk, what do you think it would say? Oh, that's too tight. That's too tight. Don't! You're hurting me. You're stretching me beyond my limits. It's just painful. But once the master gets that string to that right pitch, and he takes his bow and he hits that string, and he runs his finger up and down the neck, what happens? It makes music, does it not? Now, Sandy and I have gone to the botanical garden in Galveston, and we've seen, roses and petunias. I don't know the names of these flowers. I'm just coming to my mind. And in groups, they're pretty enough, right? But there's nothing prettier than a West Texas pasture that has a multitude of different flowers in the spring coming up. Right? Well, this is the way with the fiddle too. Or violin, depending on what it's carried in. Like that salad. With 4 strings on that fiddle, and that master is pulling that bow across those strings, or there's 12 strings for that guitar, or 6 strings for that guitar, and that master is strumming, or he's plucking, or he's picking, whatever the case may be, he's making music. The salad is given a wonderful taste. The orchestra, the symphony of the flowers, the expression of them growing, and all of them what are you doing? What's taking place? You're making music. You're doing what you were created to do. You're not just that string laid out there on that table collecting dust and getting in the way. You're being useful. And a more beautiful melody can't be played than the melody that God is playing with you at this moment. So let Him tighten you up. Let Him chop you up and mix you up with everybody else. Let Him spread Your seed amongst all these other seeds in his beautiful garden of flowers. Quit belly aching, for crying out loud, about everything that comes into your life. Accept it. Give God the glory. Praise him with all your might and move on. Thank you again, Father, for this word. In Yeshua's name and merit, amen.